Okay. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast Legal Leaders Insights, where we interview legal leaders in the innovation space. And today I'm really delighted to have as our guest Marie Ingham. Marie is the head of legal at DAZN, one of the largest sports-related OTTs in the world, and she's a very nice client of us. So I thought about inviting her with us for a very nice chat. Thank you, Marie.
Hi, Giulio. Thanks so much for having me. It's really good to be here.
Marie, normally we start this chat with a sort of analysis of your career. What steps in your career led you to your current role? Can you just tell us a bit about you, please?
Yes, absolutely. Luckily, I think mine's quite short and sweet, really, in that I started off in private practice in a media firm called Olswang, which has since merged in with CMS. I always knew I wanted to work in the media space, certainly for a broadcaster. I was lucky enough during my training contract to have a stint at the BBC, which was just the best and completely solidified the fact that I needed to work in that space, and I'd certainly wanted to move in-house. And then quite simply, I moved to what was called Perform Media Services back in 2015 now, and joined there as a junior legal counsel, and have just been able to get my fingers in all manner of pies, have a go at everything. And very wonderfully, there was a small division of that company called DAZN, where someone dreamed for what was going to be the Netflix of sport. And over the years, that's now become the dream. And in 2019, we sold off various assets, rebranded as DAZN, and here we are today.
Absolutely. I mean, I like the idea of the Netflix of sports. So your background is always in media, but sports in media is different from pure media. Can you tell us, because there's much more regulation, because you have the media regulations plus the sports regulations. So what are the main challenges in the digital sports environment for a head of legal like you?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. There's certainly, I would say, legal regulatory challenges as well as just the technical challenge. It's very dated now for us to refer to the Netflix of sports, because actually the models are quite different in, what we're delivering, live content versus, a set library of content. Yes, that's probably the main challenge when you ask what is the legal challenge facing us. It's about regulation, because as you say, we've got that last year we were able to acquire some betting assets, which has brought that in-house. So yes, we have local broadcast regulation in various jurisdictions, but then if you've now got this whole new limb of what are the local betting regulations, if indeed betting is permitted, is advertising permitted? I would say it was arguably simpler a few years ago when we were a pure broadcaster, and we were an OTT broadcaster. As many of you and the listeners will be aware that just doing something through a pure subscription model is not really the way that the industry is going now. So we're obviously looking at many different methods to monetize, which now means that we've got back into the advertising space. We've had to introduce linear channels in various jurisdictions. We've got free-to-air platforming. So yeah, it opens up all of these different areas, and we're obviously just having to constantly risk assess, keep our eye on the ball, understand what the current regulation is in each jurisdiction, and how that may change depending on, does a regulator yet recognise do they still aim their regulation at simple linear channeling, or have they started to bring the digital services into their jurisdiction, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, you made a very interesting point. So basically, the tendency is towards diversification and maybe creating more engagement with customers, because when probably you started your career, the media sector was more one way, like you were just providing contents to your audience without knowing much about them. Is it changing now? It's or are you trying to sell more? But it's not just a question of quantity; it's also more a quality, right? To be better tailored.
That's exactly it. Obviously, as you have to appreciate, we're competing against the incumbent sports broadcasters, as well as all manner of other tech platforms who know the power of sport and what a draw it is to get customers. So very much DAZN's idea is, we're not simply a streamer anymore. The aim is that we should be a destination platform. And as you say, that then is very exciting because it introduces all these different methods. And the key is that we are providing enhanced experience. You're not just going to be watching some sports content. There is all these really fabulous products that can be included in your viewing experience. But yes, that now brings us, it takes us away from being a pure broadcaster. An example is something like Fan Zone, where you have fans chatting to each other during a feed. The question we're thinking about at the moment is, if fans can start chatting to one another, typing messages, that now brings you arguably into the realms of becoming a communicator, telco type offering. That's a whole new raft of legislation we haven't looked at. We have in the UK things like the Online Safety Act. I think, recently that is not something we've had to really concern ourselves with. Now we're really, really alive to this idea that depending on where we go with some of our really exciting products, I think of things like, offering, we set up a DAZN gym and Roblox, for example. Those are being marketed to young adults and youngsters. So we really have to now take in a whole new raft. And the other one, obviously, to highlight is we're not just talking about, yes, we're UK headquartered, but we're not just looking at the UK legislation. Obviously, we're looking at everything all over the globe. So it's an awful lot to keep on top of.
Yeah. So what is your approach when you enter into a new market or into a new stream within a market where you normally operate? Like you mentioned betting, you launched it in Italy, where you were the Serie A broadcaster, and you've been operating for many years, but that is a new line of business. So what is and you do it globally. So what is your approach when you enter into anything new out of your comfort zone?
Yes, well, depends who we're doing it with, obviously. In some territories, we're lucky enough to operate a partnership model. So if we already have a partner in region who can help us with the local landscape, that's obviously great. Otherwise, we're very much relying on people like you. So it simply is, guys, you know the market better than us. Please educate us. And we just have to go in and risk assess the whole thing, basically, because some things may not be workable just right now if the local area does not really allow it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I find very complicated of being a sports broadcaster is that if I'm watching a movie and if there is a lag of 3 seconds, I don't really care. But if my team is scoring and I've watched the goal 3 seconds later, for me, it's a disaster, which makes your work much more complicated in terms of ensuring a quality of service. Am I right in saying that the bar of quality in sports is much higher than in traditional media, I would say?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that with a straight yes, because I'm sure other people would maybe argue, but you're correct. You're correct that the demands are huge, and it's one thing to have a VOD product that you can, broadcast on multiple streams at different times throughout the day. Obviously, we have that one load, the one, during that 90-minute period. And as you say, any lag of a few seconds is deemed unforgivable. So yes, the demands are huge, and that's why, yes, we have very talented tech lawyers, for example, who have to make sure that our supply agreements are watertight with great SLAs, etc., and making sure that this stuff hopefully never happens, and if it does, it's corrected very, very quickly.
Sure. How do you see the future? I mean, you said that you need to explore different fields of innovation. You are entering into new markets, and new markets generate new regulations. And in Europe, we love regulations. So, like in Europe, we have the digital decade sets of regulations, but I don't know, we have a legislation on artificial intelligence coming in Europe, probably coming in UK. I don't know about the US because probably they change their mind every other day. I mean, which stream of legislation is going to be the most challenging, or which area of law is going to be your next challenge for the coming years?
It's a really good question. And I would probably say right now, part of the beauty of working where I do is that I almost don't know. I know the things that everyone knows at the moment, as we've talked about, the online safety aspects. We've obviously got data privacy and those demands, and trying to balance that against collecting really valuable customer data and how we can utilize that for insights. I think the main one for us right now is the fact that, as I mentioned before, we've got these great teams who are constantly looking to monetize and enhance the user experience. So I can't yet guess where that's going to take us. A good example was the other day we announced a collaboration with Audi, for example, so that DAZN now has an in-car entertainment experience. Nice. Fabulous. My regulatory, colleagues wouldn't have known that they needed to start looking at, what's the landscape there around what can and cannot be shown on a car while it's in motion. I was joking with someone earlier, all we need to do is start doing a distribution agreement for cruise liners, and then next thing you could start looking at, maritime regulations. So I think at the moment it's actually the unknown. But I think, yeah, that's really exciting. And I suppose the main key that I would say the biggest challenge for us these days is it's still a nascent. It feels like it's still quite a young product still. And we know this, everyone's trying to find their feet, especially the regulators. So I think it's always going to be challenging in different areas. And when I'm talking about marketing, advertising, until there's some level of consensus. And I think that's the bit we just don't feel yet. And I think it's this idea that every regulator might interpret something different, have a different level of focus on one thing over another. And until we get sense of how everyone feels in a block together like the EU, that's probably the challenge, is because it feels like different standards being applied differently all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, you made a very interesting example about product safety legislation, even in the infotainment in a car, but also when the environment becomes more immersive, you have a bigger responsibility, because your customers become start interacting with you, and you don't know if there is a miner on the other side of the screen, and obviously you are offering different products, so it's even more on you to be aware who is on the other side of the screen, so to better tailor the product, which is something totally unfamiliar for a traditional media broadcaster. Is that right?
Indeed, yes. I mean, I was going to say that obviously puts the pressure on us now to make sure that we conduct appropriate due diligence and try and understand who we're dealing with. And as you say, it is a completely different burden, as it were, than to someone, popping a linear channel on 10 years ago. And I think, we all collectively have to really take on that responsibility.
Yeah. New stress, new burden for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Just last question. How many lawyers do you need to cover so many jurisdictions and so many areas? Is it? I
would argue at least 500. We certainly have nothing like that. So yeah, we've got around 30, which is.
Well, it's still a good number. What is the skill that you would mention first for a good in-house lawyer operating globally like you?
I'm going to say resilience, I think. I think it's an ability which kind of branches over many areas, but I think it's the ability to roll with the punches, and just expect that every day is going to be, unreal, and it's going to change, but you can deal with it and you can chop and change advice, according to whatever goes on. Obviously, we'd all say the main one is having a real commercial brain on you. I think there's a skill there, but I think, if you can, on a global basis, nothing's ever going to be the same, and you get different, what might work in one area is not going to work in another part of the globe. So yes, just expect that it's all going to be a little bit chaotic, but ultimately therefore very fun.
Thank you, Marie. I mean, I will write it down, and I think resilience is the good word, because you need to get used to so many different scenarios. So what might be disrupted the day after, because it's a new market, a completely new environment. So thank you very much for your time. I think your insights were very useful, and I thank all the audience, and arrivederci.
Bye-bye.